All right, here we are, folks. Coach Hannah Allgood in the building here, a few days ahead of your first Western States 100. How you feeling, Coach?
Feeling good. Yeah, I'm excited, nervous. I think more excited than nervous, but maybe that's because I've never run the course before, so it's more about adventure versus nerves at the moment, you know. The
Western States debut, you made your 100-mile debut at Javelina where you got your golden ticket. Mm-hmm. I got to pace you for your fourth lap, which was a highlight of 2024 for me. Any salient learnings about the 100-mile distance that you are taking from Javelina to apply towards Western States?
Well, I'm sad that you can't be my pacer for Western States. Let the record show I did ask, but HOKA had him first.
I couldn't keep up with you.
Whatever. So you said at Javelina, and then I was like dying. I think the nice thing about Javelina is like, it was nice to have pacers, but I think it really showed me who I need, like what kind of energy and personality in that space. So yeah, it was kind of like my two pacers at Javelina couldn't pace me for Westerns, but I feel like good.
So I lived up to the job?
Yes. The only fail that you had is you said, Hannah, you only have 50K left. And I was like, oh, God, okay.
Oops.
So that was the only negative.
Failure. Who's taking my and Allison Baca's place this weekend?
Yeah, so my friend Rachel Lemke, she's going to be pacing first. Yeah. And then
I remember, just for the audience here, at Gorge Waterfalls 30K, I was running with you with a camera 2 years ago, and you came through the Waklala aid station. She said, smile check. And now I use that thanks to Rachel Lemke. I like it. She was just making sure you were smiling.
Yes. Yeah. No, so she's, kind of paced from Forestdale. And then from Green Gate to the end, I've got my teammate, Robbie Simpson.
Awesome. So this season so far, Muck 50K, you dominated. Then you went to, well, actually, maybe sticking with this first. I got to see you there because it was a race in my backyard. I ran with you for a couple of miles and we were just chit-chatting. And you made a comment that I think is relatable and I'd love to ask you about here where, I mean, to me at least, it felt like you were already kind of feeling the pressure of Western States, that maybe there's nervousness attached to this. I mean, obviously it's one of, if not the biggest stages in the world. How do you deal with just like the nerves and the pressure that comes with competing at this type of a stage?
Yeah, I think recently it's been interesting because I would say, I raced Muck 50K to one, because I wanted to get faster. So I was like, this is a perfect way. But also I think it's doing those local events really kind of like brings me back to like why I like this sport. Like I really just love running and like exploring new places. And I think going back to that feeling where there was like no pressure really, it was just like really fun. And so trying to spend a lot of time there mentally this week actually is like, where can I kind of damper the nerves, but like increase the excitement around racing? And so I think that's what I've spent, a lot of time. But then kind of as always, I've said this now for years, but like I have my different affirmations for this week. I've got my different words and like those change, we've talked about it. And so I have those for Western States too. And so it's like trying to have a different mentality around it. But yeah, I think doing those local things, like still with friends, is like, that's just as fun for me. And then trying to put myself mentally back there when the pressure feels a little bit higher.
Can you share your affirmations?
I'll share you a couple of words.
Okay, please.
So one of my words is calm. And then one of them is brave. So it's going to be fun.
That's a great mixture.
Yeah.
Maybe just sticking with this for a second, we have known you to be somebody who works on the mental side, and this has now been a theme in a couple of our conversations. Tara Dower specifically said she was working with sort of like a sports psych mindset person. I think, was it Ryan Montgomery, who made a similar comment about working on mindset? So I think it's just part of this macro trend of like really leaving no stone unturned. It's not all about the training. It's not all about the strength training, but it's like also the nutrition and the mindset and stuff. So maybe you could just speak a little bit about like what the mindset aspect specifically has brought into your athletic career since you started working on it in earnest.
Yeah. So I started back in like now it's 2023. And so I think for me, that was kind of the missing piece, like as but if the audience doesn't know, like running wasn't part of my background. I'm not used to competing at high pressure events. And so I was noticing I was starting to kind of crumble under pressure where I was like, oh no, like now there's this expectation of me. And I knew that was a piece of my training that I needed. I was like, yeah, I can do the running part, but like if I'm not there mentally, like it's just never going to go the way I want it to go. And so that's evolved. I've been with the same sports psych now for the last couple of years, and we've grown together, and it's changed of like what I've needed. Because every race is different, but I think that's where if you can put your brain in the right spot, especially with ultras, there's a point where your legs hurt, your feet hurt, your stomach hurts, your eyes hurt, you're like, I just want to be there. And like, that's the moment where you have to kind of have that mental kind of like arsenal of where can I go mentally to keep going. So, yeah.
Very, very cool. Yeah. All right. So your season so far, we talked about the Marin Ultra Challenge 50K, and then you did the Canyons 50K, where I think you surprised yourself. You won a really big victory. That was the last time we talked in this sort of environment. Maybe share a little bit of learnings from that, especially given the fact that it is on this terrain outside of Auburn, sharing some of the same trails with a couple months of perspective. What are the main takeaways from that big victory?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fun part is I have, I think in my mind, I have only done 250K. So yeah, I'm sure some people were like, ooh, that's not very far. But for me, I'm like, I feel like I have a lot of matches to burn now where I feel like I'm ready to go for a long time and like hold on to it mentally. And today was kind of funny because we're going from like Roby Point just to like to the track. And I was thinking back to Canyons, like, I do not remember this road being this steep. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so that was kind of funny, but I think it's just, I think that is another event, kind of like Western, where it's like, I don't know, like I'm confident for sure, like in my abilities in the 50K distance, but going against a lot of really fast 50K women, I was like, well, let's see what we've got and put myself in a position. And I think I feel the same way with Western. It's like, I have good race instincts, but also it's like, I want to put myself in a position to do well. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of risk, but then you also have to listen to yourself. So, yeah.
So sticking on that for a second, having only raced 2 50Ks, I know there's intentional thought that goes into building a season towards this peak moment. And you could be self-conscious about the fact that you haven't done a 50 miler, 100K, which a lot of people use as the final dress rehearsals to ensure that body and mind are strong enough for this type of a distance. I'm sure you put a lot of thought into it yourself with the team that you have around you. I'm sure the audience would love to hear how you thought about that. And I mean, to what degree it feels like it was the right thing for you to do to build up to Western States.
Yeah, so there's obviously thoughts about doing Canyons 100K. So that was kind of the bigger transition was like, do I do the 50K? Do I do the 100K? And for me, I know myself, and these events are pretty draining for myself, and I'm just not someone that can like constantly be competing. It's just really mentally taxing. And so it's like kind of had to be that choice of like potentially the 100K could have gone really well, but there's also potential that, talking about the mental piece, like say I would have had a really bad day at Canyons, that would have been really hard for me to come back to this course. And so I really wanted Western to be like a really fresh experience and like have no really, honestly, prior experience where it's like, oh man, this is where I like really felt bad, So you only have positive things. And then there's other events earlier in the season that I thought about, but it just didn't really work out as far as like, my friends were running things, my husband was running things. And it's also important that I support them. Like they come and support me all the time. And so a lot of the events I kind of planned were like, well, that's not going to work. So then we tailored things a little bit different and then did, a recce out here on the course. And so that's kind of how we adjusted things. But yeah, ultimately it's just knowing myself and knowing I only really in a season have only so many big things that I am willing to do, but also like mentally I'm able to kind of hold on to.
It's a really important lesson. And looking back at my career too, I do think in multiple occasions, I had my best race one race too early. So I think that's a really important thing for people to think about as they build their professional careers is like saving the big one for when it matters most. You just mentioned the course recce that you did. I think you and Rachel came out together. Share a little bit about that. Obviously you'd been on the course just down on the Auburn side, but as you were out on the race course that you're going to be on Saturday, were there any things that surprised you or things that excited you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot surprised me, to be honest. I mean, I think it was, I'm glad that I saw it. Usually I don't like to recce. I don't like to see. I'd rather kind of honestly like have the course come in a little bit blind. Kind of, I like the adventure. I like the experience of seeing it for the first time. I always know where the climbs are. I always know where the descents are, but that same kind of thread. It's like, oh, I'm seeing this for the first time versus like, oh gosh, I hate this part or something. But yeah, it was really, the nice thing is Rachel is so supportive. And so it was really fun to come out with her. So she, could also see the course. But yeah, I think the canyons were a lot steeper than I thought. I was like, oh, this is like a proper climb.
I was the Devil's Thumb is tough. Yeah.
I was like, there was one part that, I think we're going to butcher all the spots, but it was like, I can't even call this hiking. I'm just like straight walking. It was so hot. I was like, oh man. But it was like such a good learning lesson. I think to like really appreciate not only the heat, but also the course. It is such a fast course, but also like, it's harder than I think I thought, to be honest.
I remember now thinking back to the Canyons 50K interview we did after your win. I made the comment that Western States is all about the mixture of speed and strength. And I said, well, Hannah, Allgood's a kind of a mixture between speed and strength. Having done the recce, do you feel like your personal skill set is a good match for this course?
Yeah, I think I think that was something that was really interesting to see because it was more like looking back at the past champions and the past people that have been really successful here. I'm like, they're obviously talented athletes across the board, but also like, they win UTMB, they win CCC, and it's like, those are big, big events. And I think you need to have kind of all of those skills. You have to be able to run fast, but you also have to be able to run up and down consistently. And I would say, yeah, it definitely is more challenging and more kind of like a mountain course than you think, even though it goes so fast. Yeah.
So thinking back to Javelina, I'm just remembering it was hot as hell. I mean, it was one of the hottest Javelinas. It's
like 102 or something. Yeah.
This weekend, it's trending a couple degrees above average. Do you feel like maybe that experience, having done your first 100-miler in similar conditions, might be an advantage? Or I'm sure it's the heat component is obviously always part of Western States. Has that been part of your preparation?
Yeah, too much probably. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I would say the experience at Javelina has made this feel a lot calmer about the heat. Like I know how hot it can get, and I know kind of that the canyons can kind of be that like convection oven effect that I hear about. But I would say I used to be afraid of the heat, but after Javelina, I was like, if you manage it and you start early, I was like, oh, I feel like I can definitely take care of myself. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be moments where it's hot, but I think you just have to really tune into how you're feeling. So I think that, looking at the temps, I'm like, oh, only 95? That's not so bad, and obviously that's very hot, but I think that experience at Javelina made me less nervous for a hot day at Western.
Yeah. If you need a new white Freetrail bucket hat, we'd be happy to hook you up. I'm not sure the sponsors would look kindly on it.
I don't know who has that. I hope so. It's in good hands. I'm still sad.
We got plenty. So talking about the race specifically too, and like the women's field, it's one of the stories this season is that we are going to crown a new women's champion here. We were just talking, Corinne and Tim Tollefson and I, about how it's been since 2017 where we haven't had Courtney, Katie, and Ruth, who've kind of been, the Mount Rushmore of female trail running for a long time. Still, though, without those icons, Travis did an analysis, and the top 25 depth of professional female athletes is as good or better than any year, including the years when the greats have been here. As you think about the race dynamic and things like that, I'm sure you've put a lot of thought into how things might play out. Is there anything you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think it's the one thing that is really fun about the women's field this year is like, I think it is like the depth is actually insane. Yeah. Like, and I think that's something that I've thought about a lot, like tuning into this, but I think it's just really a cool reflection of like just how far this sport really has come, and especially, the women's field in general. But yeah, I think I'm already mentally preparing for it to go out hot, and like managing that. But I think there's, I'm kind of butchering the answer. It's fine. But I think it's just going to be really fun. It's going to be the deepest field that I'm in. And I think wherever you fall into that field is like, we'll see how it is on the day, but are you fun. The type of person, maybe as we wind down here, I'd love to get a sense of, because like coming into this race, it's a big opportunity, right? And
for some athletes, they will view it like Rod Farvard, for example, is like, this is a black or white thing for me. You know, like I'm going to swing and go big. And if it goes terribly, like there's a very good chance, more or less.
Yeah.
I've never raced like that. And so I think it's just an interesting thing to talk about. Like we've just been sort of meditating on mindset and stuff here. Like what would be the success for you, right? Like obviously you are a person who can win here. It's also only your second 100 mile of your first Western state. So, you know, racing more conservatively, finishing in the top 10 would still be a victory, coming back the next year, building experience. Your personal goals, Hannah, putting you on the spot a little bit.
I would say, you know, part of this too is probably why I butchered the last question is because I actually haven't looked at the start list. I don't like to look at start lists, and that's not because I don't want to necessarily look at them, but I think I'm really focused on what I can do. I can't control anything anybody else is doing. So if I can only focus on my lane, then I can focus on how I'm feeling, how I'm doing. And that I think is the number one piece for this race, that it's like, you have to pay attention to how you're feeling. Yeah, I'm going to have to play the field a little bit. But I think a success here for me is, finishing is a success, but also I obviously have a time goal that I'm not sharing on air. But that's ultimately like, I'm really just going to be pacing off of that and then putting myself again in a good position, like, where I feel like I can put myself in a good position, and that'll put me where I need to be at the end of the race. So I think it's really just for me, it's focusing on my own lane, focusing on my own things, because I just can't control anything anybody else is doing.
All right, so 15:28. That's your goal,
let's go. Yeah, you know it. That's it. How'd you guess? Gosh, dang it.
I'm remembering now that we before we pressed record, Ryan wanted you to talk about your musical choices for this weekend, in the case that you need to grab the iPod Shuffle or whatever it is that you're listening to tunes on. What's going to be on the playlist?
Yeah, I actually haven't created it yet, but honestly, it's probably going to be all the same. The usual. It's like we got some Blink on there, we got Jimmy Eat World, we've got everything that I listen to. So probably a lot of the same, but I'm excited. Hopefully I won't need music. I only need it for the last lap of Javelina. So I feel like I usually can tune in a little bit better to how I'm feeling when I don't listen to music. But then if you get into the dark cave, the music is nice.
Well, having been on Team Allgood at Javelina and done that lab with you, man, you're such an impressive athlete. Like, I hope you go into this with that confidence, and certainly the team here at Freetrail is rooting for you. So good luck, Hannah.
Thank you. It's going to be fun.